Welcome to True Echo, where powerful true-to-life stories echo far beyond the screen. Today's story will grip your heart, challenge your assumptions, and leave you questioning how far love, legacy, and justice will go when truth comes knocking. When a billionaire mother visits her son's grave, she's shocked to find a single black mom and child mourning there, and what follows will leave you speechless. Stay with us, this story isn't just emotional, it's unforgettable. A soft drizzle painted the air gray as Victoria Blackwood stepped out of her sleek black Rolls-Royce and into the quiet chill of Woodlawn Cemetery. The sky hung low, mourning along with her, as it had every month for the past 3 years. She clutched a bouquet of white calla lilies, her son Adrian's favorite, gloved hands trembling slightly though her expression was composed, regal, and cold. Victoria, widow, heiress, and now the sole survivor of the Blackwood dynasty, had always prided herself on control. In the world of billion-dollar boardrooms, headlines, and political influence, she was known as the Iron Widow. But in this corner of the world, in front of a simple headstone marked Adrian James Blackwood, 1991 to 2019, she was just a mother with a broken heart and no legacy to speak of. She moved silently across the cobblestones, her heels tapping a rhythm of grief. The cemetery was usually empty at this hour. She made sure of it. But today, the path curved into something unexpected, someone unexpected. Victoria stopped short, heart seizing. A young black woman knelt before Adrian's grave, her shoulders hunched in grief. The coat on her back was worn, her shoes scuffed and wet. Her arms encircled a little boy, no older than 4, who clung to her as though he'd crumble without her. Victoria froze. This wasn't just an intrusion. It was a rupture. She stepped forward briskly, each movement sharp and precise. "Excuse me," she said, voice cool, commanding. "This is a private moment." The woman turned, startled. Her tear-streaked face lifted, and Victoria was struck, not just by the sorrow in her eyes, but by the fierce protectiveness etched into her expression. I'm sorry," the woman stammered, her voice trembling, "I didn't know anyone else would be visiting today." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" she demanded. "And what are you doing at my son's grave?" The little boy turned then, and Victoria's breath caught. His eyes were unmistakable. Green, strikingly so, the same intense shade that had once peered up at her from a crib, from across a dinner table, and from the casket she had closed herself. Those were Adrian's eyes. The young woman rose, steadying herself with quiet dignity. "My name is Emily Parker," she said. "And this is my son, Tyler." Victoria's brows drew sharply together. "I don't know you." "I work at the diner downtown," Emily continued, her voice softer now but no less firm. "We come here every month. Because," she looked down at Tyler, brushing a tear from his cheek with maternal tenderness. "Because Adrian meant everything to us." The world tilted. For 3 years, Victoria had lived with the belief that Adrian's death had severed the Blackwood line forever. That the weight of his absence would haunt her estate until it crumbled into nothing but cold marble and old money. Now, in the span of 30 seconds, a single mother from a dusty corner of town had just shattered that belief. "How important?" Victoria asked, her tone sharp with suspicion. The rain began to fall harder. Emily didn't move. Her arms around Tyler tightened, but she didn't look away. "So important," she said slowly, "that Tyler is Adrian's son. And I promised Adrian I would always take care of him." The bouquet slipped from Victoria's fingers, the lilies landing with a whisper on the wet marble. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. She stared at the boy, at his curls, his trembling lower lip, his wide green eyes, her son's eyes. The same ones that used to shine up at her after soccer games, during piano recitals, on Christmas mornings when she handed him keys to a new car or a new penthouse apartment. Adrian had no child, Victoria snapped, forcing back the dizzying possibility. "I would have known." Emily's voice cracked, but the words didn't falter. "He didn't want you to know." Not yet. He said you wouldn't accept it. Not the relationship. Not the child. The accusation, true or not, hit harder than it should have. Victoria blinked, the image of Adrian's soft smile flashing through her mind like a ghost. You're lying. I'm not. Emily reached into her coat pocket, slowly, and withdrew a photograph, slightly worn, edges curled from time. I didn't come here to start anything. I just wanted Tyler to know his father. And I wanted to keep my promise. Victoria snatched the photograph from Emily's hand. Adrian stood in the center, his arm around a beautiful blonde woman. Behind them, smiling softly, was Emily. The name floated back to her from memory. Jessica. Jessica Blackwood. A cousin. Estranged. The daughter of Robert Blackwood, disowned decades ago after challenging the family's business ethics. And now, here was her child's child. My God, Victoria whispered. Jessica. Emily nodded. Jessica was Tyler's birth mother. She died giving birth. Adrian asked me to raise him. Victoria's mind raced, her pulse deafening. She barely heard Emily's next words. He didn't want Tyler raised in the Blackwood world. He said it would destroy him the way it almost destroyed Adrian. And in that moment, Victoria saw it clearly, not just the boy who looked like her son, but the shadows beneath Emily's eyes. This wasn't a woman clinging to a fabricated story for money or opportunity. This was a woman who had been carrying the burden of truth, in silence, for years. Victoria turned to leave, her voice hollow. This changes nothing. But even she didn't believe that. Not anymore. And neither did the rain, which poured heavier now, as if to drown the lies the past had buried. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour by the time Victoria climbed back into her car, but she barely noticed. Her driver asked something, maybe about the umbrella she didn't use, but the words dissolved into static. Her mind was spiraling. She sat in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce like a statue carved from ice, the photograph still in her gloved hand. The edges of it were damp now, the ink bleeding ever so slightly. But Adrian's smile was still there. And so was Jessica's. A name she hadn't spoken aloud in over 20 years. A name buried with family shame. The driver took her home in silence. Victoria's estate was a vast stretch of land guarded by iron gates and century-old hedges. Inside, it was everything you'd expect from a billionaire heiress: marble floors, oil paintings, and chandeliers dripping with crystal. But tonight, none of it mattered. She walked through the grand halls as if she were sleepwalking, the photograph clutched tightly, her heels echoing like gunshots in the emptiness. When she reached her study, she locked the doors behind her and stood by the window, staring out into the foggy night. Somewhere out there, a boy named Tyler was sleeping. A boy who had Adrian's eyes. A boy who, by every measure, was her grandson. But he had been hidden from her. Raised in poverty, by a stranger she had never met. Victoria's breath hitched. Her chest tightened. Was that how Adrian had seen her? Someone so cold, so power-hungry, he feared letting her near his own child. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock. "Enter," she said without turning. The door creaked open and in stepped David Reed, her most trusted assistant, discreet, loyal, and thorough. "You asked for me, ma'am?" "Yes." She turned slowly, the photo now resting on her desk. "I want everything you can find on a woman named Emily Parker." Quietly. "And I want it fast." David hesitated only a second before nodding. "Of course. What exactly are we looking for?" "Her connections. Her history. Any ties to Adrian. And most importantly," Victoria's voice lowered, eyes sharp as a blade, "proof of what she's claiming." David left swiftly. Victoria sat behind the desk, her fingers drumming the mahogany surface. "Tyler." She said the name aloud for the first time. It didn't sound foreign. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like a puzzle piece that had always existed, just hidden in the wrong box. Still, 1,000 thoughts churned. How much did this Emily woman know? How had she remained hidden all these years? And why now, why reveal herself? As dawn broke the next day, Victoria did something she rarely allowed herself to do, she wept. Not for her reputation. Not for control. But for Adrian. Her only child. The boy she had raised in privilege, yes, but also in isolation. A child she'd armored against the world, never realizing that armor was suffocating him. That afternoon, David returned with a leather folder. "She's clean," he said, placing it on the desk. "Too clean." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "No criminal record. No lawsuits. No financial fraud. She works double shifts at 2 local places, a diner and a convenience store. Lives in a small 1-bedroom rental. Behind on rent a few times but always pays eventually. No family nearby. Only an aunt who lives out of state." "And the child?" Victoria asked, opening the folder. "Legally, Emily is his guardian. But we found something odd." David leaned in slightly. "There's no official record of Tyler's birth mother. No hospital files. No birth certificate with maternal info. Just a birth date and Adrian's name." Victoria froze. "Meaning?" David looked uneasy. "Meaning it's almost as if the mother never existed. Not legally." Victoria flipped through the photos, Emily working behind a diner counter, walking home late at night, carrying groceries and a sleeping child. She looked ordinary. Tired. Resilient. But there was one line in the file that made Victoria pause. Evening law classes. Enrolled for 3 years. Quiet student. High marks. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "She's been studying law." "Yes, ma'am." She leaned back in her chair, mind racing. This wasn't a helpless single mother just surviving. This was someone playing the long game. Someone preparing for war. And Victoria Blackwood knew wars. She picked up her phone and made the call herself. "Hello." Emily's voice came softly. "This is Victoria Blackwood," she said without pleasantries. "I want to speak. In person. Tomorrow. My office. Noon." There was a pause on the line, a breath of tension. "Very well," Emily replied. "I'll be there." Victoria hung up. Then she opened her safe, pulled out her private checkbook, and placed it on her desk. If this Emily Parker wanted to play chess, then Victoria would make the first move. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly predict, was that Emily had already been 3 moves ahead. The next day, just before noon, the elevator doors slid open on the top floor of Blackwood Industries, the very heart of the empire Victoria had spent her life building. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the sleek, minimalist office that screamed wealth and power. Behind a sprawling mahogany desk, Victoria sat like a monarch on her throne. And then the doors to her private office opened. Emily Parker stepped in, her presence calm yet quietly powerful. She wore no jewelry, no designer clothes, just a neatly pressed blouse tucked into a plain skirt. Her hair was pulled back, and her eyes were steady, betraying none of the nerve she might have felt. Victoria didn't stand. "Miss Parker," she said coolly, gesturing toward the chair across from her. "Please, sit." "I'll stand, thank you," Emily replied politely, her gaze locked onto Victoria's like a challenge issued and accepted. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. Few people dared to refuse her. She slid a check across the desk. It gleamed under the sunlight, $200,000 printed clearly across the front. "This," Victoria said, voice crisp, "is enough to start a new life. A much better one than what you've been scraping together." Emily didn't touch the check. In exchange, Victoria continued, you'll leave Tyler with me. Permanently. He'll grow up in comfort, with access to the best education, the finest medical care, and every door opened. You can visit. Occasionally. But he will be a Blackwood. Properly. For a moment, silence filled the office. The offer floated between them like a snake in a garden. Emily slowly leaned forward, her voice calm but edged with steel. You're trying to buy your own grandson. I'm ensuring he lives the life he deserves, Victoria countered, unfazed. Something you can't give him. Love, she scoffed slightly, doesn't pay rent. Emily stared at the check, then looked back at Victoria, fire rising in her eyes. You think you're the only one who's lost something, Mrs. Blackwood? You think money replaces a father? A home? Safety? Adrian didn't want Tyler raised in your world. He told me that. He was afraid of what you'd turn his son into. Victoria's nostrils flared. Emily reached down, picked up the check delicately, and tore it in half. The sound echoed like thunder. Victoria stood abruptly, fury flaring. Do you think that makes you noble? I could destroy your life in hours. You have no idea who you're up against. But Emily didn't flinch. I do, actually. I've spent the last 3 years preparing for this exact moment. Victoria blinked. What? I've been working 2 jobs, yes. But I've also been studying law at night. Quietly. Intentionally. And documenting every step of your empire's corruption along the way. The fake LLCs. The offshore accounts. The city contracts you rigged through bribes. Victoria's blood ran cold. Emily continued, calm and relentless. Your son wasn't just a casualty of fate. He died after gathering enough evidence to destroy you. He just didn't get the chance to finish. Victoria's voice came in a whisper. You're bluffing. I'm not. Emily took a step closer, her voice low and dangerous now. Adrian gave me everything. The files, the emails, even the flash drives. He told me that if anything happened to him, I needed to protect Tyler and finish what he started. Victoria stumbled back slightly, her world tilting. She was no longer facing a waitress from a diner. She was staring at a woman carrying a loaded legal weapon, one that could collapse everything. I came here today, Emily said, not to make peace, but to give you a chance to walk away quietly. Don't push me. Victoria clenched her fists, her voice a tremble of rage. You think you're going to take my company down with words and flash drives? I built this empire from the ground up. I am untouchable. You were untouchable, Emily said. Until now. She turned toward the door, pausing only once. Adrian died trying to make things right. If you had loved him half as much as you loved your reputation, he might still be alive. Then she walked out, leaving Victoria standing behind her desk, furious, afraid, and for the first time in her life, uncertain. As the door clicked shut, Victoria didn't move. The sunlight that once bathed the office in warmth now felt like a spotlight on a woman about to fall from grace. She picked up the phone with trembling fingers. David, she said, barely above a whisper. Prepare the legal team. I'm going after custody of that boy. But even as she spoke the words, a small voice inside her whispered a truth she didn't want to hear. She had already lost. The day after their confrontation, Victoria sat alone in her study, the Blackwood estate cloaked in an eerie silence that felt heavier than ever. A fire flickered in the massive marble hearth, but it gave off no warmth she could feel. Her hands, usually steady as steel, trembled as she reviewed the custody petition David had prepared. The language was airtight. Cold. Strategic. Exactly how Victoria liked her legal battles. But this wasn't like any fight she'd fought before. This wasn't a boardroom or a hostile takeover. This was blood. Family. Legacy. And somewhere deep in her chest, buried beneath layers of pride and fury, was a feeling she hadn't let herself feel in years: fear. A sharp buzz from the desk phone jolted her. David's voice came through, quiet but urgent. "Mrs. Blackwood, you'll want to hear this. Emily Parker just retained counsel." Victoria's eyebrows arched. "Who?" There was a pause. "Morrison, Caldwell, and Pierce." Victoria's heart missed a beat. They weren't just a top-tier law firm. They were legal predators, famous for suing billionaires and bringing corrupt empires to their knees. And now they were defending a diner waitress. On what planet can she afford them? Victoria hissed. David hesitated. "They're representing her pro bono. I think they want to make an example out of you." Victoria stood, the file in her hand falling to the floor. "She's waging a war." David's next words confirmed it. "They've already threatened to file a lawsuit for abuse of power and discrimination if we move forward with the custody case. And there's more. They've hinted they possess sensitive evidence tied to your company, possibly leaked from Adrian." Victoria turned to the window, her mind reeling. For years she had buried every dirty deal behind walls of money, NDAs, and shell corporations. But Adrian had always been clever. Too clever. And too quiet. She had brushed off his brooding as weakness. His distance as defiance. But what if it had been rebellion? Her son, her legacy, was he the one who started the unraveling? She barely heard David say he was ending the call. She stood in silence, the crackling of the fire now sounding like static in her ears. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, a message. "Unknown number. Just wait." 2 words. But they sliced through her like glass. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because she already knew who it was from. Emily Parker. The next morning, the calm shattered. Victoria arrived at Blackwood Tower, her usual entourage in tow. But before she even stepped through the front doors, she was stopped. Men in dark coats, their jackets marked with bold white letters, FBI. "Victoria Blackwood," one said, holding up a badge and a thick packet. "We have a federal warrant to search these premises. You are under investigation for money laundering, tax fraud, and obstruction of justice." Victoria froze. Behind her, her employees stopped in their tracks, whispers spreading like wildfire. Her phone buzzed in her purse, and she fumbled to read the screen. David Thornton. The IRS froze all accounts. This is critical. Another message appeared before she could respond. City Times headline. Victoria Blackwood's empire exposed, leaked files show years of fraud. Amanda Torres. Victoria recognized the journalist immediately. Ruthless. Feared. Known for tearing apart empires brick by brick. And beneath her byline, it read. Leaked by Emily Parker. Victoria swayed slightly, her breath caught in her throat. This was no warning shot. It was a declaration of total war. Her phone rang again. She answered with a mechanical, yes. Emily's voice came through, calm and sharp as ever. Good morning, Victoria. I told you not to push me. You think this is justice? Victoria spat. You're nothing. You're no one. I'm the woman your son trusted when he had no one else. I'm the woman who raised his son when you didn't even know he existed. And now, I'm the woman making sure you answer for what you did. You can't take down the Blackwood name. I don't need to. You already did that yourself. Emily's voice dipped lower, quieter. You silenced your cousin. You ruined Robert Blackwood to steal your place. Adrian found out. He gathered evidence. That's why he died, Victoria. Someone close to you made sure he never had the chance to speak. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. No. You didn't need to give the order, Emily said. But it was your empire. Built on betrayal. And Adrian was about to burn it all down. For the first time in decades, Victoria felt weak. Hollow. Emily's voice turned cold. You lost your son because of what you are. And now you'll lose everything else, too. The line went dead. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Blackwood realized she wasn't the predator anymore. She was the prey. The hours after the raid passed in a blur. The headlines exploded across every major media outlet. Blackwood dynasty collapses, FBI raids billionaire heiress, whistleblower reveals dark truth behind fortune. Cameras swarmed the gates of Victoria's estate. Longtime business partners ghosted her. Board members resigned. Stockholders fled. But none of it compared to the moment Victoria's front doorbell rang again. She had barricaded herself in her mansion, windows shuttered, lawyers in disarray, silence consuming the grand halls. She wasn't eating. Wasn't sleeping. And now, someone dared show up at her home. She opened the door herself. Emily Parker stood there. She wasn't flanked by lawyers or reporters. Just her. Calm, collected. Dressed plainly, with a slim leather dossier in her hands. Victoria's voice cracked. You came here. After all this? Emily didn't flinch. I came for Adrian. Victoria blinked, confused and furious. You came to gloat. You think this is justice? No, Emily said softly, stepping inside without being asked. This is the truth. What Adrian died for. What you refuse to see. She walked past the grand staircase and laid the dossier gently on the table. Her every movement was deliberate. Respectful. Not of Victoria, but of the moment. Victoria's hands were clenched, heart racing. Emily opened the dossier. Inside were dozens of files, photographs, USB drives, typed reports, handwritten notes, all labeled and organized with obsessive care. Victoria's eyes widened. Her knees weakened. This is what Adrian was gathering, Emily said. Evidence. Documents he smuggled out of your own company. Records of bribes, offshore accounts, fraudulent contracts. He gave them to me in case anything happened to him. Victoria sank into a chair. No. He couldn't have. Emily's tone remained steady. He could. And he did. He found out what happened to Jessica too. The real reason she ran. The truth about what you did to Robert Blackwood. Victoria looked up, her face ashen. Adrian discovered you orchestrated Robert's downfall to secure your place at the head of the family. Jessica knew. She left before you could destroy her too. And Adrian. Adrian planned to confront you. To expose everything. Victoria's voice trembled. Then, why didn't he? Emily looked away for a moment. Her jaw tightened. Because someone found out. Someone on your payroll. And they made sure Adrian never spoke a word. The silence that followed was suffocating. Victoria pressed a trembling hand to her lips. You're saying he was murdered? Emily nodded. Staged to look like an accident. But it wasn't. No, Victoria whispered. I never wanted him dead. I believe you, Emily said softly. But your empire killed him anyway. And now, you have to live with that. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, real, raw, uncontrollable. She had buried that boy. Her son. With a heart full of anger, disappointment, and unanswered questions. But now she knew the truth. And the guilt carved through her like a knife. I failed him, she whispered. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply closed the dossier and said, you didn't just fail him. You crushed him. For several minutes, neither woman spoke. Then Victoria looked up. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes red. "What do you want from me, Emily? Haven't you taken enough?" Emily hesitated. Her voice wavered, not with weakness, but with emotion. "I don't want your money. I don't want your empire. I just want Tyler safe. Loved. Free of the cruelty and control Adrian grew up under." Victoria swallowed hard. "And justice?" Emily nodded once. "That too. For Adrian. And Jessica. And for everyone your money silenced." Victoria wiped her face with shaking hands. She looked broken. But beneath the wreckage, something cracked open. Something real. "I can't undo what I've done," she said quietly. "No," Emily replied. "But you can stop it from continuing." And then, unexpectedly, Victoria reached for the dossier. She stared at the contents for a long time. And for the first time in her life, she didn't think of strategy. Or spin. Or damage control. She thought of Adrian. And she wept. Emily stood, eyes softening slightly. Adrian wanted to change the Blackwood name. Not erase it. Just, cleanse it. Give it meaning again. He died trying. Victoria looked up, barely able to speak. "And you?" Emily's voice cracked just a little. "I promised him I'd finish what he started." Victoria nodded slowly. In that moment, something in her broke. Not just from guilt, but from surrender. The unshakable Titan was finally human. Emily turned toward the door. "I'll see you in court," she said gently. And this time, Victoria didn't argue. She just watched her go, a woman with no empire, but a heart stronger than anyone Victoria had ever known. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the walls. Former board members whispered nervously in the pews. Outside, protesters waved signs demanding justice for Adrian Blackwood and accountability for corporate corruption. The once mighty Blackwood Industries stood in disgrace, and at the center of the storm sat two women who couldn't have come from more different worlds. Victoria Blackwood, dressed in a dark suit that looked suddenly too heavy for her narrow shoulders, sat next to her defense attorney, pale and hollow-eyed. The fire in her stare had dimmed. Gone was the razor-sharp woman who had once dictated terms in billion-dollar negotiations. In her place was a mother, stripped of armor. At the plaintiff's table sat Emily Parker. Her hair was pinned in a low bun, her suit modest but crisp. She radiated calm. Poise. Strength earned from years of carrying the weight of truth alone. Beside her, Professor Michael Bennett and the legal team from Morrison, Caldwell, and Pierce prepared their opening arguments. Then the judge entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. As the proceedings began, the courtroom turned silent but electric. Michael Bennett rose, his voice calm yet loaded with impact. "Your Honor, we are here to present indisputable evidence that Victoria Blackwood not only wielded her fortune to manipulate the justice system and silence family members, but that her actions, both directly and indirectly, led to the death of her only son, Adrian Blackwood." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "Furthermore, we will prove that our client, Emily Parker, acted on Adrian's direct wishes to protect his child and expose the truth that would have otherwise been buried by the enormous wealth and influence of the Blackwood name." Victoria didn't look up. She kept her eyes on her trembling hands. The evidence came like waves crashing on stone. Leaked emails from Adrian. Surveillance videos from the night he met with a confidential informant. Secret financial records hidden in shell companies. And the dossier Emily had carefully assembled over 3 years, documents signed by Victoria, bribes disguised as consulting fees, falsified reports sent to regulators. Each piece of evidence added another nail to the coffin of Victoria's legacy. And then Emily took the stand. Her voice was clear. Steady. "Adrian and I met through Jessica, his cousin. I was Jessica's best friend. When she passed giving birth to Tyler, Adrian didn't hesitate, he stepped up. But he was scared. He loved his mother, but he feared her judgment. He feared she would try to turn his son into another tool for power. She paused, looking directly at Victoria. He didn't hate her. He just wanted to protect Tyler from the life he lived, one where love came second to control. Where emotions were seen as weakness. Where image was everything. The judge listened intently. Emily continued. Before Adrian died, he gave me everything. Documents. Emails. Backup drives. He told me if anything ever happened to him, I had to protect Tyler. And the truth. Then came the most emotional part. I didn't want to destroy Victoria. I just wanted her to see that what she was protecting wasn't a legacy, it was a machine built on lies. Adrian died trying to stop it. I owed him this. I owed Tyler this. The room was silent. Even the judge had gone still. Then, unexpectedly, Victoria's attorney stood. But instead of cross-examining Emily, he simply whispered something into Victoria's ear. For the first time since the trial began, she rose to her feet. The courtroom held its breath. I would like to speak, Your Honor, Victoria said, her voice hoarse. Permission was granted. Victoria stepped to the center of the room, the weight of the world on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, then looked at Emily. You were right. A hushed murmur spread through the courtroom. I spent my life building walls. Power, wealth, control, they were my bricks and mortar. And I raised Adrian behind those walls. I thought I was protecting him. I see now I was isolating him. She turned to the judge. I have done unforgivable things. I silenced people. I buried truths. I let ambition become my god. And in doing so, I lost my son. Not just in death, but long before. I didn't know Tyler existed because Adrian was too afraid to let me near him. Victoria's voice cracked. And he was right to be afraid. She turned back to Emily. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to say this, Adrian chose the right person. You were the mother he would have been proud of. Emily's eyes shimmered, but she said nothing. Victoria's final word struck the entire room like thunder. I withdraw my claim for custody. Tyler belongs with you. Gasps echoed again. The judge blinked in surprise. I also authorize the full transfer of my remaining shares of Blackwood Industries to a new trust in Tyler's name, she added. And I accept the court's decision, whatever it may be. When she sat down, the silence in the room was no longer tense, it was reverent. The judge adjourned court for the day. As the gavel fell, Victoria didn't lift her head. Emily stood slowly, heart pounding, not in victory, but in the gravity of what had just happened. The woman she had once feared most had surrendered. Not to the law. To the truth. Weeks passed. The court formally awarded full legal guardianship of Tyler Blackwood to Emily Parker. In a move that stunned financial circles across the country, Blackwood Industries was placed into a restructuring trust, with oversight from a third-party board, and the majority of its future assets earmarked for the benefit of one person, Tyler. But for Emily, victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like closure. She hadn't fought to win money or power. She'd fought to protect the memory of a man who died for truth, and to raise his son in the light he never had. One crisp autumn morning, Emily sat on the front porch of her new home, a modest but beautiful house nestled on a quiet street with a small, thriving garden in front. The kind of home Adrian used to say he wanted for his family. A place where laughter echoed louder than ambition. Tyler, now 5, darted through the yard with a toy plane in his hand, his laughter ringing out like wind chimes. Inside, a letter sat open on the table. It was from the state correctional facility where Victoria Blackwood now resided. Emily had been surprised to receive it. She debated opening it for hours. But eventually, she did. It wasn't long. Just 2 handwritten pages. But every word bled with sincerity. Emily. There's no way to rewrite what I've done. No way to undo what Adrian endured. But I want to thank you for giving me the chance to see clearly, even if it came too late. Tell Tyler. I loved his father, even if I didn't show it the right way. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of remembering. Victoria. Emily folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a wooden box where she kept Adrian's things, his old watch, a college photo, a postcard he once gave her when Tyler was just born. Later that evening, Emily sat outside with Tyler curled up beside her. The sky above them turned violet and gold, stars peeking through. Mom? Tyler asked softly, head on her shoulder. Yes, baby. Was Grandma really bad? Emily didn't answer right away. She gently brushed her fingers through his soft curls. She made some very big mistakes. But she's trying to fix them now. And we can forgive people who are trying to change, can't we? Tyler thought about it for a while, then nodded sleepily. Yeah. That's what Dad would do. Emily smiled, tears threatening but never falling. He would. And that's what we'll do too. Years passed. Emily went on to finish law school and started a foundation in Adrian's name that offered legal and financial support to whistleblowers and single parents. She built a legacy not just out of the money Adrian left behind, but out of the strength, resilience, and compassion she had cultivated in the shadows. Tyler grew up knowing exactly who his father was, not a business icon or a tragic figure, but a man of principle. A man who chose love and truth over privilege and silence. One sunny afternoon, years later, Emily stood backstage at her foundation's annual gala. The ballroom beyond was packed, doctors, lawyers, educators, community leaders, and hundreds of families her foundation had helped. And on that stage, standing tall and poised in a black suit, was Tyler Blackwood, now 17. He stepped up to the podium and adjusted the microphone. My name is Tyler, he began. And I'm the son of Adrian Blackwood. The room went silent, hanging on his every word. My father didn't get to raise me. But because of the people who loved him, because of my mom, his legacy didn't die. It just changed. It grew. He looked out over the crowd with eyes that had seen too much sorrow for a child, but that now gleamed with peace. I'm not here because I inherited wealth. I'm here because I inherited courage. And I plan to use it. Not for power. But for people. The applause that followed was thunderous. Backstage, Emily wiped her eyes, watching the boy she had fought so hard to protect become the kind of man his father would have been proud of. And somewhere, in a small prison cell, Victoria Blackwood sat by the window as the sunset spilled orange and gold across the sky. She held an old photo of Adrian. Her only son. No more lawyers. No more headlines. No more illusions. Just memory. And somewhere, finally, in her hollowed-out heart, came the first flicker of something she'd buried long ago. Love. Not power. Not legacy. Just love. In a world ruled by money and influence, this story reminds us that the greatest legacy we can leave behind is not built in glass towers or written on checks, but carved in the hearts of those we love. Adrian Blackwood's story didn't end in silence. It lived on through Emily's strength, through Tyler's integrity, and through one ultimate truth: justice always finds its voice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to True Echo, where powerful stories echo long after they're told. And if you've ever had to stand up against power for what's right, share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you in the next one.